I've been following the lawsuits that have been going on in the state of Texas with the mask wars, and I wanted to take this opportunity to give my take on it, kind of a citizen's point of view. I'm not an attorney and I don't have any legal experience, but based on what I've read, because I've read the writs of mandamus, I've read the denials, I've read some of the rulings in the state district courts, and I kind of got my perspective from reading that, and I wanted to give my take on it. Before that, I want to give a little background for those that don't know. Over the course of this week, several cities and counties individually filed lawsuits against the governor of the state of Texas, Governor Greg Abbott, and arguing against his executive order GA 38. Well, Governor Abbott and Attorney General Ken Paxton were quick to file what is known as a writ of mandamus in the Court of Appeals. They filed two separate writs, one in San Antonio in the 4th Court of Appeals, one in the 5th Court of Appeals in Dallas. Well, yesterday evening, Abbott was dealt 2 blows. Both writs were denied. I found this kind of surprising, but I've kind of found it, positive. And that's mostly because in reading what one of the judges in the appeals court said, kind of gave me an inkling as to what the argument was made by this particular county. And I think that argument is what all these counties are making. Their argument isn't that the governor's power trumps the local counties and cities. Their argument is actually that executive order is overreach. That's a totally different argument, lawsuit argument than what Paxton and Abbott are defending. Because Attorney Paxton and Governor Abbott are defending that, okay, we issued the order, this order trumps the state, trumps the county and the city. The Disaster Act allows the governor to make these orders. These orders are like law, and these laws trump the cities and counties. Well, these counties and cities are not fighting that, it looks like. They're saying, okay, granted his laws trump what we're trying to do, but this particular executive order is overreach because he's ruling against a tool that we're trying to use to prevent the virus. What happens when it goes to appeal? In this particular one court, I think it was the 4th Court of Appeals, I don't remember which, the judge says, your request for relief and leaving it and overturning this restraining order is denied because what you're doing is overreach. The use of masks is a tool that counties are entitled to use. Counties and cities and school districts. So basically, both of these appeals courts agreed on the same thing, that he was doing overreach. Well, now Ken Paxton is filing an appeal in the Texas State Supreme Court. People say that because it's a power struggle, Abbott and Paxton are liable to win. Now, given that the Texas Supreme Court is entirely Republican, it's possible. But if the Supreme Court, and this is one thing that these legal, and this is why I say this, I've been hearing a lot of legal analyses, and each analysis that I've heard comes to the same thing. It's going to be based on the rule of law. It has to be based on the rule of law. in this case, the rule of law that they have to determine is, did Abbott overreach with the executive order? Not whether or not his order trumps the city and counties. That's a big difference, I think. So I'm thinking if the state Supreme Court, if they're impartial and they're fair, they're going to look at this case in the same manner, because that's the way they have to look at it. That's why the case was in favor of these counties and cities, both in the initial restraining order and in the writ appeal, because that's the argument that has to be addressed, not the argument of whose law trumps who. Okay? So if they're following that rule of law, then they have to rule, right? They're more likely to rule in favor of the cities and counties. Now, this is what I think is going to happen. There's still pending lawsuits for restraining orders that are up for view with several courts. Fort Bend just filed one yesterday evening, I believe. I also believe Austin filed one yesterday or the day before yesterday, and I think they got their restraining order yesterday as well. So there's 2 restraining orders that were given successful. Is Abbott going to appeal those to appeals courts? Most likely he may. If he does, and they're both denied, that's 4 cases denied at the appeals court level. I believe the more cases are in favor of the county and city, the more likely the Texas Supreme Court is going to rule in favor of the cities and the counties. Unless these judges are politically biased and politically favor the governor and politically favor the attorney general. If they do, I wonder if the counties and the county governments and city governments can take it to a federal appeals. I don't know if that's possible. But what I do know, or what I do suppose is, if the Texas Supreme Court rules in favor of the governor and the attorney general, that's a possible thing that can happen. Another possible thing that can happen, and I just figured this out from reading the news last night. Secretary Cardona of the U.S. Department of Education has already warned Governor Abbott that he's infringing on the authority of school districts, because the school districts are obliged to follow, it's called the ESSER Act, that was made by the U.S. Department of Education. If Cardona believes that it's an infringement, and if he sees that these counties and school districts lose the cases, he's more than likely to file a federal lawsuit against the state of Texas, and in the process will file one against Florida. That lawsuit, I don't think Abbott can win. So, if that happens, Abbott will lose. His executive order will be overturned anyway. We just have to wait and see. But in my opinion, it looks more like these counties and cities were going to win this because of the type of argument that they're fighting in court, and because of the improper defense that is being made by the Attorney General and the governor. We're going to have to wait and see how this plays out. It's going to be interesting to see what it's going on. So I'm going to be watching this play out, and I will probably bring another opinion as I deem it necessary, just to see how revisit the issue and see how it's playing out. But as it stands right now, it's 50-50 that these counties are going to win, and I want to believe they will, because of the type of argument that they're fighting. because it's not power versus power, or power trumps power. It's basically overreach. And overreach is, even though it appears to, in my opinion, it appears that to be the same thing as the argument that Paxton is making, but at the same time, it's a totally different argument. Because the counties could be saying, we're not arguing that his power, or that the laws trump what we're doing. We're arguing that an executive order is overreach and is preventing counties and cities to be able to prevent the spread of COVID. That's the argument they're making. They're not arguing who's got legal precedence or as far as laws. It's basically overreach. And I believe they're going to win because Abbott, if you look at what he's been doing lately, he's been very silent. Silent in the fact that he is refusing to news media interviews. Just in Houston, Channel 13, ABC, NBC Channel 2, CBS Channel 11, and Fox 26. He's refused interviews with all four of these news outlets. I haven't seen an interview for him on any of the outlets on the news outlets in Austin, the news outlets in Dallas, and the news outlets in San Antonio. The only thing that I've seen from him, the only activity in the news media, is his spokeswoman, Renee Ez, I think it's the name, has been reiterating the same statement he made a week and a half ago. That he's set on defending the freedoms and rights of Texans. He has not personally addressed the issue in the media. Why is that? The only reason that I can think of is that he has something to hide, because he knows that if he goes and he accepts media interviews, some of these news medias are going to ask him some very specific questions. And he knows that if he answers those specific questions, or he tries to change the subject, he is going to be put in a negative light and he's going to look suspicious. Why? Because there's something that he is doing that is illegal or is not morally right. Think about this. And I'd ask you to think about this, as I said before, in a neutral perspective. Analyze his actions, what he did, not the reason why he did it, not the political reason behind the action itself. Analyze it and see for yourself. Was it morally correct? Was it socially correct? Was it ethically correct? Those are the key factors, morally and ethically. If they're morally and ethically incorrect or wrong, then he's acting incorrectly. If he does something that is ethically correct, or is morally correct and has great benefit to the state, there's no argument from me. There's no argument from anybody to say that he's acting properly. But when you do something that you know is wrong, and you try to hide it by not allowing news media interviews, what else can you believe? He is doing something not proper. Think about that. That's all I have to say. Thank you for watching.